Come on, let's have some fun, guys. Okay, so thank you very much, all of you who joined our session. So just let me know that you see my screen, that everything is fine. Amazing, great.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much for all of you that join our session. So in this session, me and Pavel will actually take you through a journey of malware reverse engineering in order to develop your own malware. So in this workshop, you will learn how to take an existing malware, break it into small pieces, and from understanding the inner recesses and techniques of the malware, Pavel will take those techniques and develop his own malware based on those techniques that are reverse engineered. So I will take the dark side ransomware, I will dissect it, and from those techniques, Pavel would make some great shenanigans or a great malware. So it will be very fun. And again, it's only a small glimpse into our actual workshop. Our workshop will be open in the 28th of May. And in the end of this presentation, you'll have the opportunity to grab your own 20% coupon code and register to our workshop, a live workshop where you get all the necessary knowledge to become a malware developer with a lot of reverse engineering in it. Okay, so let's get started. Welcome to the power of malware analysis and development. My name is Uriel Kosayev. I'm the author of the Antivirus Bypass Techniques book. It's the book that basically presents you how to take antivirus or EDR software and basically bypass them or evade them. I'm also the founder of a startup named Simdel, where we develop a hardware-based solution to prevent malware attacks. I'm also the founder of the Trainsec.net Academy. It's an online academy where we actually will also do the malware development workshop with the 20% that we'll give you in the end of this presentation. Myself, I'm also a malware researcher, red teamer, and a trainer and speaker in my day-to-day. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can just follow me on this handle. And Pavel, if you want to present yourself, of course.
Yeah, so I'm Pavel. I've been doing lots of development in many years, usually focusing on Windows-related stuff. I've written a few books, also a founder in these companies Uriel mentioned. I think it's good enough. We can move forward.
Pavel doesn't like to talk about himself too much, but he's an amazing person with a lot of experience in hacking and malware development and a lot of security stuff. He likes to consider himself as a simple programmer, but you know he only has 6 or 7 books, and one of them is the Windows Internals 7th edition, which is amazing. Okay, so let's continue. So let's start with the basics. Okay, most of this workshop will be practical, so this presentation will only give you some kind of a baseline to go with us to understand our language, and from there we'll go into the practice itself. So first of all, for those who don't know, some of you maybe know come from the malware analysis and reverse engineering and malware development stuff, and some of you maybe not. So let's do a basic baseline. So what is malware analysis? I like to keep it in short. It's the art of research and analysis of malicious software behavior and patterns. So in that way, you can take samples, reverse engineering them, and analyze them in order to understand their techniques, how they behave, how they operate on your computer or your cell phone or whatever, and what kind of impact they want to do on the attacked machine. Okay, so it can be an info stealer, ransomware, and keylogger, and so on. So basically, it's very important to understand that malware analysis is not only for blue teamers or for defenders, it's very, very much used by attackers also. A lot of APT groups and nation states, like any nation state that has a lot of resources and knowledge, they actually practice malware research in order to create better versions of malware, in order to conduct malware development. So they have teams, they have actual teams that do the reverse engineering of a lot of malware. They learn from a lot of techniques from a lot of malware, and basically they take those techniques and re-implement them in better ways in their own malware, in their own attacks, which is amazing. So The 4 stages of malware analysis, basically, the basic one is automated analysis. You can use any kind of virtual sandbox environment to analyze your malware. And then you have static analysis, which is basically analyzing a sample or a file or a piece of code without actually executing it. Dynamic analysis, which is the next stage, is basically when you go and execute the malware or the sample or the piece of code to see actually how it behaves on your system. It's also called behavior analysis. And the hardest level, which we will take you through in our workshop actually, is the reverse engineering. And from there, you'll learn also how to develop your own malware based on those techniques. So then we'll go, what is malware development actually? The practice of developing code for malicious purposes. Everyone knows that, okay? But it actually very, very needed in today's world, because how it can be that APT groups and nation states and even novice hackers develop their own malware and attack companies and gain a lot of money and do a lot of damage. Today, not only defenders but also red teamers, okay, especially red teamers, need to know how to simulate those attacks, and they need to understand how malware operate. And if you're a red teamer and you only running your own tools like crackmap exec or not net exec and metasploit and stuff like this, it's okay, it's fine, but or nmap or whatever, it's fine. But the actual threats today, the actual malware, the actual attacks today are based on malware. And in order to be a malware developer, you need to know how to reverse engineer, how to analyze those malware and learn from them. It's very, very important. Okay, so it's not only for malicious purposes, okay? Malware development can be legitimate, and it's, of course, depending on the purpose of the use. But again, if you're a blue teamer or a red teamer, or even if you call yourself a purple teamer, whatever, okay, whatever color you want to name yourself, if you're in the security field, you need to understand how malware operate, and in that way, you will know how to simulate those threats, and then how to detect and prevent them. Let's talk a little bit about the malware development lifecycle. So how is malware developed in a high level? And then in the next slides, Pavel will basically explain you, after my demo, Pavel will take you through how to actually and practically implement and develop your malware based on the techniques that I will show you. So in order to develop your malware, of course, like any code, you need to develop the code, you need to write the code, okay? Whether it's through using pieces of code from the internet or developing from scratch, okay? Then you go through testing and QA. You want to make sure that you actually test the code and it works, and to debug it, okay? And then it's not only that you need to develop the malware, but also you need to implement some defense, some bypass techniques in order to evade defense mechanisms like antivirus and EDRs and so on, DLPs. So the next level is to implement bypass techniques. Okay, if you want to understand more about how to implement bypass techniques and stuff like this, you can go and buy my book, Antivirus Bypass Techniques, and learn from there, of course. Okay, then you take the malware that you developed with the implemented bypass techniques and you test it against the EDR or antivirus in a controlled environment or lab that you've created. So for example, you create your own virtual machine, you install there your EDR or antivirus or whatever, and you run the malware. And then you need to validate that you actually bypass the EDR entirely in the static engine, the dynamic engine, heuristic engine, and so on. Then you want to, if your malware basically is detected by this EDR or antivirus, you want to actually make sure how it was detected. So you need to collect indicators, or I like to call it IOCs, but it can be misleading, but you need to take as much as IOCs or indicators of compromise that can be potentially detected by the malware and remove them from the malware. It can be IP addresses, can be function names, can be pieces of opcodes in assembly, can be a lot of stuff. Maybe a chain of called Windows API functions that you want to change in order to evade hooking mechanisms in EDRs and stuff like this. And you basically want to make sure that everything is in check. After you removed all of this, you can basically go and, of course, if you want, you can work closely with the threat intelligence team and also make their detections better. And you can work close with the blue team of the organization that you work with and make the defense better. It really depends on the goals you put for yourself. So why learn malware development? First of all, to know how malware is written. Okay, so in order to know how malware is developed, you need to first of all analyze malware. You need to understand what kind of malware you have, how it is written, how you can reverse engineer it, how EDRs and antivirus actually look at the malware. Okay, from the assembly point of view, from hooking functions, from kernel callbacks, and stuff like this. To have better offensive and defensive skills. Again, most of the threats today are based on malware. You want to be a great offensive researcher or a defensive researcher, whatever, you need to know malware development. That's it. To become a better red teamer and detection engineer, you want to become a better red teamer and to simulate threats on companies that you test and stuff like this. You want to become a better detection engineer in an EDR or antivirus vendor that you work at, or in some consulting company or whatever. You need to know how malware are developed. Again, both from reverse engineering perspectives and from the developer perspective. Better understanding of your OS of OS internals, whether it's like Mac OS, Linux, Windows, whatever. You need to understand the inner recess of your operating system. Better understanding of OS API functions. Again, I will show you some of those in the labs, in the lab that of DarkSide ransomware that I will present to you in a moment. And then Pavel will actually take you through the development process and use of Windows API functions in his code. And because real hackers know their shit. So know your shit, know your stuff. If you want to become a real professional, you need to know all of this. To know your enemy, you must become your enemy. So if you want to become a real security professional, a great security professional, you need to delve into the head of the attacker, into their psychology, into their technical capabilities, into everything. And then you can actually help companies become better, period. The one who possesses the skill and knowledge to understand and practically apply things, malware development, wink, wink, has the power to rule them all. So why do you even care? Because the bad guys do, as I already told you. Threat actors evolve by learning and leveraging the craft and TTPs, or tactics, techniques, and procedures, by researching malware samples in the wild. So why cannot the good guys do so? Why the good guys don't go into those malware, learn from them, and then re-implement those techniques and making them even better in their own malware? Why is that? You do not have to develop your malware from zero. It's also another point that I want to make here. You can learn from real-world malware samples and incidents, take pieces of code from those malware, whether it's from the binaries or from some kind of a dump of a source code of this malware, and re-implement it in your own, rewrite it and make it to your own goals. So we got to our practical lab. So let me just hop into my virtual machine real quick. I have here a VMware workstation. Let me just make sure that if I accidentally run the ransomware or something, that I disconnect my NAT, which is okay for most of cases. But if you analyze a malware, you want always to make sure that you don't have any kind of internet connection. And if you want to have internet connection for some reasons, maybe you want to analyze the behavior of the malware, of how it operates and how it actually communicates to a C2 channel or to a C2 server. Of course, you will enable NAT or enable NAT, or you will do some kind of a bridge between two virtual machines, and you will route it through a different virtual machine, like I teach in my malware analysis course. But you want to make sure that you don't use the bridged mode. Okay, it's another tip here. Don't use the bridge mode, because it actually will give the malware the opportunity to hop into other computers in your network. Okay, so it's a very basic and small tip to you, especially if it's a ransomware or a worm. Okay, so actually, before I hop into IDA and show you some assembly stuff, let me real quick show it to you. in a P parser software. You have a lot of those. Pavel also wrote an amazing tool called Total PE. You can also use this for these purposes. And one of the things that me as a researcher that when I analyze a malware, one of the first things that I seek for are Windows API functions, okay, and the DLLs, of course, that they're corresponding to. And you know, if you have some experience in malware analysis or in analyzing any kind of a PE file, you will see that in most cases you have more DLLs and more Windows API functions. So it's very weird that you have only one DLL and one API function, which exit process. So it doesn't really make sense here. Okay, it's really weird. Okay, and of course we'll explain why it is. Okay, let's open up this sample in Detected Easy now. Let me go to my desktop. And you don't see a lot of information here. Like you see, okay, it's used Microsoft linker, so you can assume that it was developed on C or C++ or whatever. Okay, so let's go now to entropy to evaluate the entropy value. And you see that the general evaluation of this file is packed. So, okay, the general value of the entropy is 7.8, which is very high, but I want to understand in what section it's actually encrypted or packed or obfuscated. Okay, so I see that the text section, in my case here, is packed. Okay, and I have another section that's called text one, which is not packed. So I can assume that in the text one, I have some stub code or a clear or what's called an actual assembly code that can be executed by the CPU and basically unpack that encrypted or packed code in the text section. Okay, so now if I go to IDA and I do space, I'll see here that I have the text one section, which is the actual clear code, or this is the actual stub code that will go and decrypt the encrypted code in the text section. Okay, and then it will go to the next stage and basically dynamically resolve the actual used Windows API functions. So you basically have hidden Windows API functions. Everything is hidden. But in some point in this malware, okay, those Windows API functions will be revealed on runtime, on execution. Now, let me just make, to be clear here. The dark side ransomware, it was I don't really remember when, but like 1 or 2 years ago, it actually attacked the colonial pipelines, gas infrastructures, which basically disabled 50%, approximately 50% of the gas stations in the United States. It's insane. One ransomware. No EDR and no antivirus detected or prevented it. This is the truth. And why is that? Because one of those techniques, or those two techniques that we will show you today, the encryption of the code, the actual malicious code was encrypted. And secondly, the fact that the Windows API functions are hidden. Now, most of EDRs and antivirus they base their detections and preventions on the fact and the usage of Windows API functions. And if it's hidden, maybe it can be an indicator, but it can evade some of those EDRs and antivirus. And in fact, it evaded one of those EDRs that they used. I will not say what was the EDR there. I'm not into the shaming business, but this was the case. Okay, one of the three big ones. Okay, so basically we have hidden DLLs and functions. It doesn't make sense. We have an encrypted section here, like the text section. Now, if I go and double click on where hell begins, it actually the function names that you see here, okay, this is the function names that I renamed them. Okay, so they didn't have the original name was sub 409 something. I actually renamed them just to make my life easier. Okay, So if you double click on it, you will see basically that I'm here using the an IDB or an IDA database after I reverse engineered and decrypted this. So you see here the decrypted code. Okay. Now I want to show you actually how the process of the decryption was made. Okay. So in one of those, in both of those functions, basically the decryption mechanism was occurred. So basically the first function to be called is the unpacking function, which basically takes those two blobs. Those are two encrypted blobs from the resource section. So it actually takes an encrypted blob from the resource section. Now, if you go here to the resource or RSRC section, you'll see also that it's packed. So you have several levels of encryptions here. So you see the sophistication here, okay? So after it loads both of those sections, it goes and into the process of unpacking. Now, I will not go into the details of the assembly here and stuff because we don't have the time. Of course, you can register to our course with 20% discount, and we'll see you there and everything. But basically, if you go and dive into the code, double click, and basically you will come to a point where you see this instruction, XOR AL EDI. The AL will hold the key, the XOR key actually for the decryption, and the pointer of EDI register with the targeted decrypted data. And in that way, with this piece of code, which Pavel will implement from the based on the C programming language, and based on this technique, it will actually go and develop the malware that it will showcase in the demo. Based in this, basically, they encrypted the malware and then decrypted them on runtime. So they took a file or took a piece of code, okay, compiled it into a file. They actually put this code into the text1 section. And then in order to decrypt it in runtime, they used XOR to actually decrypt the text1 section that you will see here. So this is after the decryption was made. Okay. So now let me put a breakpoint here in the start of the malware. Do run. Just need to input the file. Application input file. Okay. Okay. Just need to change it here because I'm a different machine actually. Maybe just do like that. Because of this, yeah, because I omitted the exe, so I don't like accidentally run it. This is why I had this problem. Yeah, troubleshooting stuff. And here we go.
Uriel, there are some questions from the audience.
Okay, let me just finish with it, and in the end of the session we'll answer everything. Okay. Great. So basically now we're in a debugging mode. So we now dynamically running this this dark side ransomware under the IDA debugger. Okay. So now if I go and double click on this function, now you see that everything is encrypted. So you see a gibberish here. Basically, it's a gibberish. Now, if I try to like analyze this those code, like I cannot analyze them. Okay, it's a gibberish code. Okay, it's encrypted. So in order to decrypt them, I need to execute those functions basically that I showed you with the XOR in order to decrypt them. So let me just do it real quick. And after I execute those functions, I can jump and voila, a decrypted section. So from that, you understand that you had an encrypted blob. After you actually run those functions, it's decrypted. Okay. So basically, of course, specifically in IDA, because I already did the reverse engineering, it was very straightforward. But in a lot of cases, you need to actually like reanalyze the code using the C keyword button in the keyboard to actually tell IDA to reanalyze the code again, okay, and make it as a function with the P button in the keyboard. So it's another like small tips for you. So basically, after you get into the function, I do F7 here. You get into the decrypted code in the text1 section. As you can see here, it's or excuse me, the text section. So now, if we go inside the API resolve here, you'll see that basically it takes the load library and get procedure address or get proc address in order to basically resolve all of those Windows API functions. So again, you don't see those functions while it's a file in your file system, but on runtime execution, you'll see all of those functions. And basically, this is called, from the malware development point of view, it's called API hashing. But from the perspective of the malware researcher, it's called dynamic API resolve because it resolves all of those Windows API functions on runtime, on execution, using load library and get proc address. You can also use a get module handle and get proc address in order to do the same thing, basically. So you basically can just use a different Windows API function. Pavel will show you that. So this is basically what I want to show you in this demo. Pavel, I will give you the amazing.
All right, thank you.
Uriel, do you want to answer several questions before going to the next session?
Let me see the questions. Oh, a lot of questions.
Yes, I will read them. I will read them to you. I will select several, guys,
Okay.
because we do have many questions. So we will answer several, and we will stay in the end of the workshop to answer all your questions. So people want links to your books, So he will send it to you, of course.